Anxiety doesn't always come from having too much on our plate or doing too much. Often, it comes from doing the wrong thing. Our guest today, Phil Moeller, had so much anxiety. He was doing all the things he thought he should be doing, but not what he really needed to be doing. And then he developed the Purpose Matrix, which will bring so much clarity and so much calm and so much fulfillment and peace that you're gonna love today's episode. And make sure you hit subscribe if you love to feel your best every week. Welcome to Good Mood Revolution. Today, we're talking with my good friend, Phil Moeller, who's an entrepreneur, a man of God, a husband, a father of five, and the creator of the Purpose Matrix. Phil, what's up, man? Welcome to Good Mood Revolution.
Matt, I'm so excited and honored to be here with the one and only Matt O'Neill. I'm really looking forward to our discussion.
Man, I love your Purpose Matrix, and I'm so excited for your upcoming book. You write that anxiety often comes from not knowing who you are. Now, I know you've got some personal experience about this. Can you tell me about a time in your life when you had higher anxiety and really didn't know who you were?
You know, honestly, the story that really comes to mind is when I was 30 years old, and every single year this happened to me. But around that time, it really hit me hard because my daughter was, I think, a year and a half old at the time. But I'd wake up on January 2nd, and it's probably off of a holiday season that I was off for 10 days straight. I probably ate too much. I probably drank too much. I just wasn't clear, and I was always had this like yearning desire that there's more, but I didn't know what that meant. And I thought it was more professionally, honestly, at the time, because I wasn't clear who I was. And a lot of my identity at that time was tied to my career and what I did. And over the course of the next several years, in an iterative process that took good turns and bad turns and all over the place, I started to figure out more and more of who I am and really how to bring a system together that tries to keep us aligned in our lives in the different areas of life, aligned to each other and in support of each other, with our most important identity versus, identities that we can create or that we think society has, that society puts on us a lot of times, or what our identity should be for others, that isn't really foundational to who we are. So I think once you get clear on really I think it's one of the most important questions we should all be asking ourselves is, who are we and where did we come from? And I think once we get more clear on that, I think it can help us get rid of our anxieties and all the things we worry about and just bring us more freedom and peace.
Let's talk about the listener. So the person listening, how do they answer this question? Who am I and where do I come from?
Yeah. So first of all, I think we can answer this from different lenses in different areas of life. So like what I would encourage you to say is for different areas of life that are important to you. So if you think about faith, if you think about family, if you think about your work or your profession, or if you think about your health, I would answer that question for all of those really individually. So like for me, from a health perspective, who am I and what is my purpose? I want to have energy for my kids and my grandkids and to live my purpose. That's my purpose for my health. So like I have clarity on what my goal and who I am from a health perspective, but I want to answer it for every single area of life. That's step one. Step two, I really need to think about this and I need to prioritize areas of life. Okay. So health, some people say if you have health, you have nothing. And while there's truth to that, your health will be stronger if it's aligned with your highest priorities. So for me, and there's even secular books that talk about this, like Lessons for Living from Stutz. But if you have spirituality or faith first, and that's a core of who you are, and everything else supports that, then you're living in alignment of it. So for me, I'm a child of God, and that's my number one priority. That's who I am. And my other areas of life are in support of that and my ultimate goal for my faith. And if I have alignment in life and then I know how to put it into action, then I can feel good about really who I am, I guess.
And, I know in the Purpose Matrix, faith doesn't have to come first in yours. It just happens to be your first piece. Do you think that as we're figuring out our purpose in each of these main areas of life, it matters that we figure out the order of our life priorities or our life buckets?
I do think we should be thinking about it. So I think at a minimum, we should know how the different life buckets support each other, because the term I don't like a lot is balance. Because if we're balancing health and we're balancing fatherhood, right? Motherhood, being a good husband or wife, if we're balancing those, we're saying we have to compromise. But if we're saying, like, again, if I go back to my health purpose, I want to have energy for my kids and my grandkids and live my purpose that is in support. So I'm going to spend more time on my health and prioritize it because it has a bigger purpose. So I do think it's important to get clarity on your priorities. And that's for you, for where you are in your life right now, is to get clear on that. And that maybe will evolve over time. I asked you to ask the deep questions and question spirituality and question God and what that looks like. I encourage people to do that. And that's what I found that's who I am. But I think what's important is we're asking the questions of ourselves and just be open and curious more than anything.
Let's talk about the main buckets that we need to define a purpose in. We've hit on some of them. We've said faith, we've said health, we've said family, we've said career. Are there other main buckets that we should be setting purpose in? Yeah.
So I think that's, I'm going to write about this in the book, and I'm going to think about the different ways. I've heard the 8 F's. I've heard, Matthew Kelly talks about mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual, faith, family, finance, fitness. But I've also heard like friendships, fellowship, fulfillment, philanthropy, which is a PH, but just like, but F, whatever. Yeah. But those are some other ones. And I think it is important for people to think about what those are and then what is their purpose within each area of life. So I try to keep it simple. So that's why I say faith, family, finance, fitness. But, there can be other elements of that too.
Well, let's keep it simple. So faith, family, finance, which is career as well, right?
Yep.
And then fitness. The 4 F's. And you said, hey, we could go bigger. So, but let's say just for the sake of this episode, that our listener is saying, I want more purpose. I want more peace. I want more clarity. I do have anxiety sometimes. And the whole thesis of that you're presenting here is that the anxiety is that we might have purposes out of order or out of whack, or we may not know what our purpose is, and then we're doing things out of alignment with who we really are. Is that right?
So I think it's 2 things. One, we're not clear on who we are and our identity, and we're not working in alignment. So that is definitely an element of it. And that's really in the purpose matrix. That is the areas of life are the columns of the matrix. But the other thing that might be out of alignment is I might say family is more important than work, but I'm living out so that might be, yes, I'll say that, but I'm not acting upon that, right? So we have to get clear on a purpose. Then there's knowledge steps that are part of the purpose matrix, and there are action steps that are part of the purpose matrix. And we have to get clear on it. We have to learn about it, and we have to act upon it. And if we do that, we will be at peace knowing that, hey, I'm moving in the right direction, and I can be content with the actions I'm taking in that area of life. So it's not just saying this is important, but because here's the deal, who you are, it isn't what you say. Who you are is what you do, not from a career perspective, what you do. Who you are is what you do from the actions you're taking on a day-to-day basis. That defines who you are, and not what happens to you and not the results you get. Okay. You are not your circumstances. You are not your results. You are what you do, the actions you take. Okay. The results, by the way, that is feedback. So if you want worldly results, the worldly results you get, take that as feedback, adjust what you do to get better results, but it still doesn't define who you are. Who you are is what you do. So if we want peace, if we want contentment, if we want to get rid of anxiety, get clear on our purpose, educate ourselves on it, and take action.
Well, let's stick with these buckets here. So we've got our faith bucket, and for you, that's bucket 1. For me, that's bucket 1. And I want to speak to the saying, hey, my family is more important than my work, and then looking at your calendar and seeing that all your time goes to work.
Yeah, as long as you don't do that to me, though, Matt.
Oh man, you've got 5 kids, dude. Family's taking up a lot of your time. I was at I was at a GoBundance event in Austin, and John Broman was speaking, and he asked us the question this way. He said, "Are you a family man with a business, or are you a businessman who happens to have a family?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Now, before you answer that too quick, I want you to pull out your calendar and tell me what your calendar says."
Yeah.
And I pulled out my calendar, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm totally a businessman who happens to have a family," because my calendar, everything on it was business, work meetings, business conferences. Of course, we had some family vacations and things. And of course, there was, I wasn't missing sports games or dance recitals. But at the same time, I wasn't putting my family first on my calendar.
Yeah.
And that was a defining moment for me. That just him asking that question and telling me to pull out my calendar. And I made a decision that I was going to put my family ahead of my business. And what does that really mean? Well, it means that I spend a lot more time with my family than I used to, and my business doesn't flourish at the same level that it did. I'm just being honest about this, and I'm happier. So getting those priorities right, increased my joy and decreased my anxiety and increased my peace and my happiness. But it's so interesting. The scoreboard for me was finances first at the same, I was in my 30s as well at the time.
Yeah.
I want to go into The Matrix. And one of my favorite movies of all time, first of all, is The Matrix. I mean, when I saw that the first time, my mind was blown. Yeah. And so I like the name, The Purpose Matrix, because it's got that mystique to it. But we're going to stick with your order. I like it. It's faith, family, and for you, you've got fulfillment instead of finance, and then fitness. And fulfillment, is that for you? Is that career?
It is. It is. I'll just stop there. Yes, I'll stop there and let you ask the question. Yes.
So faith, family, you can call it finance or fulfillment or career, and then fitness. And on the matrix, we've got those along the top. And then on the left-hand column, we've got the peace framework. And peace stands for purpose, education, associations, courage, and example. Can you take us through your peace framework on one of these four? Like, just show us what you might have said is your purpose for, let's say, your faith or your family, and then education and so on.
Absolutely. So the way it works is, so you explained it well. And then we start with our purpose for the top. We start with the top left. We fill that out. So if it is faith for you, then what is your purpose for that? And then we start to fill out our purpose from left to right in the different areas of life. And those should be in support of our other purposes. So like my faith purpose, to enjoy God's beauty on earth and in heaven with my family. And there's a lot to that, right? Enjoy my time here, go see the world, go see the beautiful earth, but also be a good example, be a good leader for my family, and bring them on this faith journey with me. Okay. And I'll talk about, maybe I'll go into family a little bit more, and how this framework works. So my family, it's pretty simple. You heard the family elements in my faith purpose, but to live and teach our core values. And we have 7 core values. We have them at home. But then if I take that purpose, then I'm going to fill out the matrix and you go through the peace acronym top to bottom. So from an education perspective, if we want to do one thing as a family this quarter, what are we going to do? So, in Q2, it was watch The Chosen together, or Q3, we're reading a book series, but we're educating ourselves on some topic around family or around faith. So we have an education bucket within family that we're doing. Okay. From an association perspective, so who am I going to associate to become a better family man, family person, right? So for me in Q2, which we're nearing the end of, that was, okay, participate in GoBundance local events where we're going to be talking about this. So we're around other GoBundance members that are trying to be better husbands, fathers. So I'm being intentional about trying to create associations where I'm around other people that are trying to get better in this area of life. And that not only helps me accelerate my learning and my education, but it also creates a system of accountability, which you've seen as well, that is so important. Then we go to the courage. So courage, there's two parts of courage, two goals within the courage bucket that I have. One is I need to make sure we have a weekly date night with my wife, Marcia. That's one. Two is family board meetings. We have 5. So I do this twice a year, not every quarter, admittedly, but one-on-one days with each of the kids, where, as you can imagine, it's so easy for me to follow the schedule, follow the family schedule, go to all the ball games, go to all the events. Most of the time there's 2-3 kids with me, 2 with Marcia, but there's never focus and really intentional discussion with one kid. So those family board meetings are so important. And then finally, from an example perspective and it ties to my purpose for that area of life, I just want to be a good example of all of our core values, because I try to do that, but I'm not always great at doing that, right? I'm trying to be intentional about living our core values, and the best way to teach them is to do it, not to live it, not to teach it, but to live it. So I have a goal within each item that I will fill out, and then there's ultimately a deployment process that you can have for this too. But it's really filling out a goal for each of the items of the PEACE acronym for each area of life. Now, what's important is that could be 20 items. So that could be overwhelming for a quarter. So when you're looking at this, you're saying, okay, but really overall, for all my areas of life, where are the big gaps I have? I don't have any, I'm saying faith's important, but I don't have any associations around my faith. I don't have any, right? I go to church, once a month, whatever it is. I don't have associations. Well, if that's the case, that's kind of a red highlight there. I need to create some associations around my faith, because that's an important part of success in an area of life, is to have a strong group, a strong network that supports me in my growth in this area of life.
Yeah, I was at a Tony Robbins business mastery conference, and Tony said the number one thing that has the biggest influence over you is not the books you read. It is not the work that you do. It's not the things that you study, the things that you watch. He said it's the people that you spend your time with. So I started changing my associations. And what Darren said is you can completely eliminate an association. And he's like, if it's not a family member and it's a destructive association, you should look at just eliminating it, just cutting that association out. But he said some associations you can't just eliminate. It might be a parent, it might be a sibling, it might be a childhood friend you've known forever that is almost like a sibling. He said if they're not a great influence on you, you can limit the association.
Right.
And you don't have to spend as much time. And then when you go to spend time, like for instance, I didn't want to just cut my dad out of my life, and he wasn't a positive association, but I didn't want to cut him out. That wasn't the thing I was going to do. It didn't feel like the integrity thing for me. So I limited the association, and the way I did it is I geared up before the phone calls. I set an intention about who I was going to be and how I was going to respond when we went and spent time together face to face, and actually thought, hey, he's probably going to say some things that are going to rile me up. What's going to be my response?
Yeah.
So that I was like prepared for that association to not be the drain that it had been. Yeah. And that was one of the ways I limited the associations.
Yeah. I think that just goes back to within that, within your associations. Again, those are hard things to do. Limiting them, eliminating them, whatever it is, those are hard things to do. But I think when you get clarity on what your goal is and what your values are and what your purpose is, it gets easy. It gets easier than it would be otherwise. So I think it just all needs to work together. But I also, congratulations on making the move. I mean, those are tough things to do, but you're doing it, right? I mean, you got it together, Matt. Everyone that's listening knows you got it together, man.
Oh, thanks, bro. And then I was like, all right, so how do I grow these new associations? Because I was kind of at a loss. Like, how do you just go make really successful friends? Like I want my finances to be bigger than they are. You know, at the time I was thinking, how do I go hang out with wealthy people that are doing really well in business when I'm not? You know, I want to have these great relationships. How do I go hang out with people with great relationships? How do you even find these people? Right. And I ended up joining GoBundance. And then my brother was laughing at me. He's like, you got to pay for your friends. That's basically what he's like, he's saying, couldn't you just get friends the old fashioned way? I'm like, I had them. they were not the friends that I was.
Yeah, you opted out. You opted out. They didn't opt out.
And so I paid to get into a group of associations with people who had the business success and who were working on themselves as fathers and as husbands, and who were working on all these different areas. And that was a way I grew my association, was by paying to join a group of people that I aspired to be like. And it had a huge positive effect. One of those associations ended up being Adam Roach, and talk about the fitness pillar, who So I see Adam. Adam's absolutely jacked. He's one of the fittest people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And I said, man, what are you doing? Well, he said, well, come out to my event. And he had this big event, and I go to the event, and at the event, I see a guy with the biggest biceps I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's just intimidating how strong this guy looks. And he's just sitting in the crowd. And you can't help but notice somebody that looks like this guy looks. And then he ends up getting up on stage and telling his story. And he was over 300 pounds. And he's like, he was working at a restaurant. He was drinking. He was overeating. He was doing all this stuff. And he said it got to the point where one day he went to put on his shoes to go to work, and his belly was too big and he couldn't get his shoes on. And he said, I've got to do something about this.
Yeah.
And he went on this big health journey, ended up becoming like the fittest guy I've ever seen in my life. And after, he said, hey, I do one-on-one coaching for people who want to increase their fitness. So my purpose is, I see this vision. I'm like, okay, I want to look like Adam. I want to be as strong as this guy is. And then the education piece, I go and hire the trainer that he's working out with, this guy named Alan.
Yep.
Associations. Now I start showing up at the gym with Adam and my buddy Tim and my buddy Matt. And so the four of us have got this workout group as associations. Yep. And I'm texting Alan every single morning. He has me step on the scale.
Accountable.
I text my weight every single morning. The courage piece of it is that I hired him, right? It was an expensive hire.
Yeah. Right.
But I took the action. And then what's the example, man? It's like, for me, it's like how you do one thing is how you do everything. So health is a bucket for me. It's an important bucket. And if I'm going as big as I can within reason, and that bucket is going to turn into positive success for all buckets.
And the example, I mean, it's a great point, because the example works a couple of different ways. One, you're setting the example to yourself every single day in what you're doing. So I think that's the point you're making. But the other point is, when you're being an example to others, or when you're trying to be an example to others, when you're trying to lead something, just like when you learn, like you can learn by, okay, I just want to learn. But when you're learning with the intent to teach, you're going to learn more. You're going to retain more. So the example piece isn't just being an example, having an impact on others or supporting your other areas of life. It also supports you in that area of life, because if I want to be an example to others, I need to know my what. I need to know it, and I need to be able to teach it. So the more you try to step into being an example and to being a leader in any area of life, the better you are personally going to be in that area of life. And if you're trying to be an example to others, it's going to hold you accountable. So that's where that fits in. And then the other part is just, the compound effect, the ripple effect, giving back, serving others. That certainly comes into play here. And, if you're walking around with your ruck or you're eating healthy, your family's seeing that. They're going to be healthier because of it. I'm sure your whole family has been impacted by that.
Yeah. And I'm up on stage yesterday in front of 40 people at my company. Right. And so I've, and it's noticeable that I've added some muscle and I've stayed lean. That's an example too.
Right.
And so these are people I really care about. I want to see them have great health. I don't have to talk about it, but I'm one of their associations.
Right. And think about the energy transfer of that. Think about the energy that you have versus a year ago, just personally. But then think about, okay, if those 40 people make one small, minor, incremental change in their health that gives them a little bit more energy every single day, what does it do for your business, right? And that's not why you did it, but there is that ripple effect that it'll come back to you as well. And that applies to every one of these areas of life.
So one of the things you said I thought was fascinating. You said that the enemy of peace isn't failure, it's distraction. Can you break that down?
Yeah. So, look, I think when you get clear on the direction you want to go, okay, and then when you're setting goals, if you're setting goals, you're not going to succeed every single time, right? You're going to have failures in that process, and you just need to peace is knowing that you're moving in the right direction and you're being intentional to move in that direction. It doesn't mean you do every single thing. And the other thing I say is fear regret, not failure, right? So don't worry about those failures. What's important is we don't need to be afraid of failure, but we need focus, right? We need discipline. So getting clear on what our purpose is and staying and moving in this direction, because we all have a million things that we can be doing every single day in every single area of life, right? So if we're not clear, and it honestly, it ties back down to your calendar example where distractions are going to, people are vying for our time. So if we're not intentional about
or our
setting
phone,
our time,
man, or the emails, other people's priorities, or the advertisements, the social media, this stuff is all vying for our time at a rate that it never used to. And it's massive. Like distraction is crazy right now.
Well, and one thing I want to talk about this a little bit from an educational perspective, because the educational row, we are all, you hear people say, be a lifelong learner. Every one of us, every one of you is a lifelong learner. It's just, what is your source? Pay attention to what you pay attention to.
Dude. That's so good. Everyone's a lifelong learner. It's just, what's your source that you're learning from? Is it Netflix?
And one of my favorite quotes is, pay attention to what you pay attention to. Because if it's Netflix, if it's the news cycle, if it's social media, if it's garbage social media, whatever it is, if you're paying attention to it, even associations, you're associating with the TV shows that you watch. That's that is a big part of your association. So we're all educating ourselves and we're all growing. It's just we're being intentional about the direction we're growing. Is it disciplined or is it default? Is it intentional or is it on accident?
One of the things you talk about a lot too is ownership. Why do you think ownership is one of the paths to peace?
Well, I think the first thing to define there is what you own and what you don't own, and getting clear on that. Because if you think you own, let me say it differently. You don't own your circumstances. You can't control what happens to you. Now, you own what you do, and that will define your results. And those results are feedback, but you can't get too tied up even in your results. You can only own your actions, right? So if I take a business example of this, we have a goal for acquisitions for this year. I don't have full control over how much our acquisitions are. I do control how many connections I make, the quality of those connections, how many LOIs I write. I control those things. So if I'm moving in the right direction, if I know I'm putting in the actions to get to the outcome I want, then I can be at peace knowing what I own and what I don't. And this isn't don't take ownership. I'm not saying don't take ownership of your life. I'm actually saying take full ownership of your life, but understand the elements of it, what you do and who you are, not the results you get, because of those are worldly results. You need to focus on who you are at the core. And if you focus on that, because that's all you control. The other thing I've heard is if you take too much control over everything and everyone in your life, you're giving away, you're losing the important part. If you're trying to change somebody, no, you can change how good you are and what you're doing to influence them, but you don't give them the justification to control your mood, because they do influence the results you get, but they don't influence who you are or what you do. So don't let other people control your mood. Good mood revolution, right? But don't let other people control your mood. Take control of who you are and what you do. That's what you own, not the circumstances or the results. Again, you of course impact those things, but you can be at peace if you just know you did what you could.
I love this. I love that the way you define it. Take full ownership of your life, but you actually don't own the results.
Correct.
Because you don't. This is also where faith comes in big time, because God owns the results.
Correct.
He does. Right. It's his plan. It's all like we're just living in it, but at the same time, we've got to do our part. And our part is defining who we are, what our purpose is, and what actions we're going to take that's in alignment with that purpose. And if we do that, we've done our job. However,
Right.
the chips fall, the chips are supposed to fall that way. Sometimes they go the way we didn't want because there's a super big lesson there that God
Right.
needed us to learn that we could only learn because the chips fell that way. And it seems like a total bummer, but
yeah,
we learn a lot through the bummers too. The
other part of this is it just triggered, balancing contentment and being courageous. Content isn't like, just life is just easy and I'm not going to do anything. No, contentment, if you go back to even like peace, contentment is knowing I'm going after it. It's not easy. It's content. I'm content with the actions I'm taking, knowing I'm going after it, right? So you can be content and courageous. People talk about complacency. That's the wrong word. It's you can be content and courageous by moving after something and just get clear on the part of it that you own and what you don't own. So as we wrap up here, what would you say to the person listening that is trying to hold it all together, man? Like, life is hard. It just is. Trying to do our best at work, trying to be the best human being that we can be, trying to be the best friend and spouse and parent. They're trying their best. They're giving it their all, but they still feel this anxiety and maybe lack of direction or clarity. Where should they start this week? Yeah. Well, so I think just, one of the most important questions is who are you, and who are you and who do you want to be? And you really need to ponder that, think about that, pray on that, journal on that, and answer that question. And I encourage you to write down what are your priorities, your areas of life, and what is your purpose. But this is where we get caught up and where we get anxious is we think we have to have it figured out. I'm not going to know in this lifetime, right? I think I'm on the right path, and just start the path. Don't solve the path now. Start the path. So who are you? What is your biggest purpose in life, or your biggest purpose for your different areas of life? And move in that direction. And it's going to change. And I can use examples of like my financial bucket or my fulfillment bucket. That has my purpose for that area of life has changed probably more rapidly than the others. But your purpose is going to change. You're going to get more clarity on it. But you have to educate yourself and you have to move in that direction. And you will be more content if you just, I think I'm moving in the right direction. And you just have to trust that you are and let the results be what they be. But just like, things happen for a reason. I'm going to move in that direction, have some faith. And I think with that, you can be more content and more at peace. And a big thing is you have to separate from the results. Wherever you are today, separate from that. Just moving forward, own who you are. Just own that and get clear on who that is and move in that direction. Phil, I'm going to fill out a purpose matrix tomorrow morning with a cup of coffee. And I'm just so excited that you're putting this work out there, that you're writing the book, and honored that you came and shared your framework with us today. Matt, what I think you're an amazing guy. You're doing amazing things. We're trying to figure this out together. And you've impacted me in a lot of ways and inspired me to keep moving in this direction, because this isn't always easy to do and figure out. And I just like I talked about, we don't know exactly where this goes. We have goals where we want it to go, but we don't know exactly where this goes. But we're both going to be content knowing that we're moving in that direction. You've had a big impact on me, and I really appreciate it. If somebody wants to get a framework of the purpose matrix just to fill it out, or get connected with you in some way, where should they go? Yeah. So check out our website, or I'll give an email, www.moellerre.com. And there's a subscribe button, but also just info@Moeller, MOELLER.com, and we'll definitely get that to you. And we're building this out. We're building out a website. We're going to make an interactive tool around this that will give you a scorecard that you can fill out, and then a strategy plan, and then we'll have a quarterly and a weekly process so you can really put this into place. Love it, man. All right, Phil, we'll see you, man. When life starts spinning and peace feels far away, the purpose matrix might just be what will bring you clarity and confidence again. Make sure you hit like if you ever felt lost, like you were doing all the right things, but you still couldn't shake the anxiety. This will let you know that you are not alone. Here are my top 5 takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, who you are is more important than what you do. Identity isn't what you say, it's the actions that you take every single day. You aren't your results.
You are the effort, the courage, and the choices that you make each and every day. Number 2, peace comes from alignment. Anxiety often signals that you're living out of sync with your true priorities. When your actions match your values, that's when peace follows. Number 3, your purpose needs structure. The purpose matrix helps you identify who you want to be in faith, in family, in your career, and in your fitness. The PEACE acronym, standing for purpose, education, associations, courage, and example, gives you a clear path to actually live who you want to be in each area of your life. Number 4, associations are the most important part of your behavior. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with in your health, in your faith, in your marriage, and in your success. So choose your inner circle carefully and intentionally. Your whole peace depends on it. And number 5, the enemy of peace isn't failure, it's distraction. Netflix, email, social media, they don't just waste your time, they steal your direction. Reclaim your focus by ruthlessly eliminating what doesn't serve your purpose. If you're ready to stop reacting and to start living with more intention, make sure you hit subscribe. This show is here to help you realign, reclaim your peace, and live with purpose. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week on Good Mood Revolution.